So I'm sitting in this grand hall, the Upper Egyptian Hall, which is planned to be the new home for the Palace of Merintah. The Palace of Merintah is just one part of the magnificent, huge collections that the Penn Museum has of Egyptian material, over 50,000 objects, much of which have been held in storage over the last century. Over the last 10 years or so, we've been planning a comprehensive reinstallation of our galleries. Through their long history, the Egyptians had many different creation myths where they tried to explain the origins of the universe and where humankind had come from. One of the longest and most important myths involved the creator god Ptah. The god of Memphis, Ptah, was one of the great creator gods of Egypt. He has a very elaborate myth that describes how he was involved in creating the world through conceiving of the creation in his mind, the structure of the universe, humans, the place of humans in the world, plants and animals, and everything came into the mind of Ptah. The prominence of Ptah is really interestingly linked with the capital city of Memphis. Memphis, of course, from about 3000 BC onwards was the major political capital of Egypt. And so the prominence of Ptah as the main god of Memphis is connected to its political history. Memphis itself had a major temple dedicated to Ptah. In Egyptian, this was called the Hut Kapda, or the Temple of the Spirit, or the essence of Ptah. And it was such a major temple in over thousands of years, actually, of Egyptian history, that the name Hut Kapda eventually was adapted into Greek in the form Aegyptos, which is the very name for Egypt. So the name of the temple dedicated to Ptah at Memphis became the very name for the country as a whole, and that kind of speaks to the significance of Ptah. So this is a really beautiful little figurine. You can see what survives is the body of Ptah seated on a throne. Unfortunately, the head is missing. We still have the mount that once attached the head to the piece. And it was probably originally attached to a larger kind of base, but that's all missing. You can see that it consists of a number of different colors. This is what we call polychrome faience. So faience is a kind of a glazed material. The Egyptians loved to produce things in faience, sometimes called the plastic of ancient Egypt, because they produced all kinds of artifacts. So Merintah, he's one of the really interesting kings of the New Kingdom in the 19th dynasty. I think one of the neat things about him is the way that the god Ptah is embedded in his name.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, it does tell us a little bit about how important Ptah must have been for him, since his name does mean beloved of Ptah.
So I think one of the interesting things about the Palace of Merintah at Memphis is that it's one of the few examples we have that's actually been excavated of practically a complete palace. So we can look at some of the ways that it was used. It is a palace that was connected specifically with a temple. It was linked to the main temple of the god Ptah in Memphis. So, you know, it fulfills the function of a kind of a ceremonial or a religious building where the king would come when he was involved in activities at Memphis, ceremonies at Memphis. He probably came there, resided there. So in all of this, the Palace of Merintah is envisioned to be really kind of a major focal element. It's the biggest architecturally, physically, it's the biggest, most overwhelming component of the collection. So this whole space is in fact going to be sort of a simulation of the structure of the palace. You come in that space to see the soaring height of the architectural columns, and then progress into the throne room behind me. The figure of Ramses II sits. That's going to be kind of the inner realm of the pharaoh within his palace. So it's meant to kind of evoke the spaces and the lived kind of experience of the Egyptians. And an undercurrent through this gallery, of course, is going to be the god Ptah. Ptah was a particularly significant deity for Merintah. He is explained and focused on throughout the decorations of the palace. These are beautiful halls that were built 100 years ago. At that point in time, of course, the vision of museum galleries was a little bit more of a sort of an art historical type of display where, like the current display that you see in the upper hall, things are portrayed in a fairly static manner, very much sort of like a statue gallery. In planning for the new galleries, we're really interested in kind of enlivening and explaining ancient Egypt in a much more dynamic way. Designing the galleries and things we like to think about is what an amazing experience it's going to be for the public.
Yes.
Seeing these objects that have been kind of static for the last 100 years, but are going to be reinvigorated and made more dynamic.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great opportunity for people to experience something that you can't find in museums anywhere else in the world. Be able to stand in the middle of parts of an ancient Egyptian palace.
Yeah, the Palace of Merenton. It's a unique thing. There's no other museum that has major parts of Pharaoh's palace. So that's going to be really the highlight of the spaces. In all of this and the other galleries as well that are part of this, we've envisioned a much more kind of immersive and in-depth experience where people can really kind of linger and gain a full appreciation for the wonders of ancient Egypt.